The ballroom was glowing with golden lights, expensive suits, designer dresses, and glasses filled with red wine. It was the kind of party where people spoke quietly, but judged loudly. Tonight, some of the most powerful executives in the city had gathered to celebrate the success of a major business deal. Cameras were flashing. Music floated through the room. Waiters moved between tables carrying silver trays, but near the entrance stood a man almost nobody noticed. He wore a simple black jacket, dark jeans and old-fashioned boots. His hair was slightly messy, his hands were in his pockets, and he looked completely out of place. The man was Keanu Reeves, but almost nobody knew it. He had deliberately arrived without security, without a publicist, and without the usual attention that followed him. He had received an invitation through a friend who supported a charity connected to the event. Keanu had come because the organization was raising money for young people who needed help. He wasn't interested in being photographed. He simply wanted to listen. As he walked toward the main hall, a young event employee approached him. "Excuse me, sir. Can I see your invitation?" Keanu smiled and handed it over. The employee looked at it, then at Keanu. "You're with the catering company." Keanu almost laughed. "No, I'm a guest." The employee looked confused. "Right, sorry." "It's okay," Keanu replied gently, but someone nearby had already noticed. A senior executive named Victor Hale was standing with several colleagues near the bar. Victor was known for being wealthy, confident and brutally dismissive toward anyone he considered unimportant. He glanced at Keanu. "Who let that guy in?" he whispered. One of his friends laughed. "Probably someone's driver." The group chuckled. Keanu heard them. He didn't react. Instead, he walked toward a quiet corner where an elderly man was sitting alone. The man looked tired. Keanu approached him. "Is this seat taken?" The elderly man smiled. "No, please." Keanu sat down. For several minutes, they talked. Nobody knew what they discussed, but the old man's expression slowly changed. He smiled, then he laughed, and finally, his eyes became wet. "You reminded me of my son," he whispered. Keanu looked at him. "What happened to him?" The old man lowered his eyes. "He passed away years ago." Keanu didn't try to give a speech. He simply placed a hand on the man's shoulder. "I'm sorry." The old man nodded. "You know," he said, "most people here are talking about money." Keanu smiled softly. "Sometimes people forget what money is supposed to be for." The old man stared at him. Before he could answer, a loud voice interrupted them. Victor had walked over. "Sir," Victor said coldly, "this area is reserved for sponsors." Keanu stood. "I didn't realize." Victor looked him up and down. "You should probably find the general guest area." Keanu nodded. "No problem." He walked away, but something strange happened. The elderly man suddenly stood too. "Wait." Everyone nearby turned. The old man pointed toward Keanu. "That's the man who helped me when nobody else did." Victor frowned. "What do you mean?" The old man didn't answer. He simply watched Keanu disappear into the crowd. And for the first time that evening, Victor looked uncertain. Something about the stranger didn't make sense. Then the music stopped. A waiter accidentally bumped into Victor. A glass of red wine slipped from the tray. Victor caught it, but instead of putting it down, he stared toward Keanu. "Let's have some fun." His friend laughed, and neither of them noticed the elderly man's shocked expression, because he already knew exactly who the stranger really was. The ballroom became louder as the night continued. People were laughing. Business cards were changing hands. Photographers moved from table to table. Keanu stood near a large window, quietly watching the city lights outside. He had no idea that someone behind him was preparing to turn him into the evening's joke. Victor approached with two executives. One of them whispered, "Are you sure?" Victor smiled. "He doesn't belong here." In his hand was a glass of red wine. He stepped closer. "Hey, buddy?" Keanu turned. "Yes?" Victor smiled. "Enjoying the party?" "It's a beautiful event," Keanu replied. Victor raised the glass. "Then you should celebrate." Before Keanu could respond, Victor deliberately tilted the glass. Red wine spilled across Keanu's black jacket. The room went silent. For one long second, nobody moved. The wine dripped onto the floor. Keanu looked down at his jacket. Then he looked back at Victor. Victor expected anger. He expected shouting. Instead, Keanu simply took a breath. "Are you okay?" Keanu asked. Victor blinked. "What?" "You seem upset." A few people exchanged uncomfortable looks. Victor laughed nervously. "Don't act superior." Keanu shook his head. "I'm not." Victor stepped closer. "You walk into a private party dressed like that. Act like you belong here and then lecture me." Keanu remained calm. "I didn't lecture you." "Then what are you doing?" "Trying to understand why you did it." That answer silenced Victor. Then something unexpected happened. A young waitress hurried over with napkins. "Sir, I'm so sorry." Keanu smiled. "You don't have to apologize, but it wasn't your fault." The waitress looked relieved. Victor rolled his eyes. "This is ridiculous." Then the elderly man from earlier stood up. His voice trembled. "Victor." "Stop." Victor turned. "Stay out of this." Elderly man shook his head. "No, he..." Walked slowly across the ballroom. Then he reached. "Keanu, please forgive them." Keanu looked at him. "There is nothing to forgive you for." The old man turned toward Victor. "You don't even know who you're speaking to," Victor laughed. "Should I be impressed?" The old man reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened a photograph, then he held it up. Victor stared. His smile disappeared. Photograph showed the elderly man standing beside Keanu at a children's charity event years earlier. One of the executives leaned forward. "Wait." Another whispered, "That's Keanu Reeves." The room seemed to freeze. Victor's face went pale. Someone dropped a glass. The sound echoed across the ballroom. Keanu closed his eyes. For a moment, he hadn't wanted this. He never wanted the attention. Victor looked at him. "You're..." Keanu nodded. Keanu. Nobody spoke. The same man they had mocked. The same stranger they had treated as insignificant. The same person they had just humiliated. Now everyone suddenly wanted to shake his hand. Victor stepped forward. "Mr. Reeves..." Keanu raised his hand. "Please don't." Victor stopped. Keanu looked around the room. "This isn't about my name." His voice was calm. "That's the problem. Everyone listened. You treated me differently when you thought I was nobody." The room became painfully quiet. Keanu looked at the waitress. "You were kind to me before you knew who I was." Then he looked at the elderly man, and he spoke to me like a human being. Finally, he looked at Victor. "You don't need to respect me, because I'm an actor." Victor lowered his eyes. Keanu continued, "You should respect people because they're people." Nobody expected what happened next. Victor slowly placed his wine glass on the table. "I was wrong." Keanu looked at him. Victor's voice broke. "I've spent so long trying to impress people that I forgot how to treat them." Keanu said nothing. Then Victor asked quietly, "Can you forgive me?" Keanu looked toward the stained jacket, then toward the old man, and finally back at Victor. "I can." Victor looked surprised. "But that doesn't mean you shouldn't learn from it." Keanu walked toward the exit. Then he stopped because he heard something behind him. The charity director had just announced that several major donors were withdrawing their pledges. The event was suddenly in danger, and Keanu realized the night wasn't over, not even close. The ballroom had changed completely. Only an hour earlier, executives had been celebrating millions in business profits. Now they were staring at a charity organization that might lose the money needed to keep several youth programs alive. The charity director stood near the stage, holding a phone. Her face was pale. "We may have to cancel the program," she whispered. Keanu heard her. He walked toward her. "What happened?" She hesitated. "Several donors are pulling out." "Why?" "They don't want their names connected to the controversy." Keanu looked around the room. The executives who had once laughed were now silent. Victor stepped forward. "How much is missing?" The director gave him a number. Victor swallowed. "I can cover part of it." Keanu looked at him. Victor continued, "And I'll contact the others." One executive shook his head. "You're going to lose money." Victor looked at him. "Maybe." Then he paused. "But tonight taught me something more expensive than money," the executive said. "Nothing." Victor turned toward him. "Keanu, I don't expect you to help." Keanu smiled. "I wasn't planning to." Victor looked surprised. Keanu continued, I'm planning to ask you to help. Victor stared at him. Me? Yes. Keanu pointed toward the stage. You have influence. Use it. Victor looked at the crowd for the first time in years. He didn't look powerful. He looked human. He walked onto the stage. The microphone shook slightly in his hand. Tonight, he began, I embarrassed a man because I thought he was unimportant. Nobody moved. I was wrong, Victor. Looked directly at Keanu, and I discovered that the person I treated with the least respect was someone who deserved it least of all. Keanu shook his head. Gently, Victor continued. But this isn't about Keanu Reeves. He looked at the charity director. This is about the children who shouldn't have to pay for our mistakes. One by one, executives began approaching the stage. A woman pledged money, then another. Then a businessman offered transportation for the charity. Someone else offered computers. Within minutes, the room that had been filled with arrogance became filled with generosity, but Keanu remained in the background. The elderly man approached him. You changed the night. Keanu smiled. No. He pointed toward Victor. He did. The old man looked surprised. Keanu continued. Sometimes people don't need to be punished. They need to be given a chance to become better. Then came one final surprise. The charity director approached. Keanu, there is something you should know. What? The elderly man you were speaking with earlier. Keanu looked over. He was one of the original founders of this organization. Keanu smiled. I figured. The director laughed. But there's more. She handed Keanu a small envelope. Inside was an old photograph. It showed the charity's first group of volunteers. On the back was a handwritten sentence. Kindness means treating someone well before you know what they can do for you. Keanu stared at the words. Then he folded the photograph carefully. Outside, the city was quiet. Keanu stepped into the cool night air. His jacket was still stained with wine. He could have thrown it away. Instead, he smiled. The stain reminded him of something. People often reveal themselves when they believe nobody important is watching. But perhaps the greater lesson was this. You never really know who is standing beside you. The stranger at the door may be carrying a story you cannot see. The quiet person in the corner may have survived battles you know nothing about. And the person everyone ignores may be the one who teaches the room its most important lesson. Behind Keanu, Victor called out, Mr. Reeves! Keanu turned. Victor held up the wine glass. I think I owe you a new jacket, Keanu laughed. No. Victor looked confused. Keanu smiled. Keep the old one. Why? It's a good reminder. Of what? Keanu looked back at the glowing ballroom. To never judge someone before you know their story. Then he walked into the night. No. Cameras followed him. No applause, no spotlight, just a quiet man. Disappearing down a city street, and somehow that made the lesson even more powerful. Because sometimes the greatest thing a person can do isn't proving who they are. It's showing others how they should treat people when they believe nobody important is watching.